Um, I, I found myself thinking of the embryo deliberative politics in Citizens UK. I was a trustee of London Citizens, and the process there is that the citizens decide on the policy. They then select 3 or 4 policies from the policies that the citizens have suggested, which is what George was talking about. And then they decide the ones they're going to go for, and they take them off to the mayor in London. And that's what happened with the living wage. They decided they wanted a living wage. They went off to Ken Livingstone, and in a huge, with 2,000 citizens in it, assembly, they said to Ken Livingstone before he was elected, will you implement a living wage when you're elected? And he said yes. Well, they did exactly the same with living rents when Boris Johnson was asking to be elected. And they actually filmed him saying yes, he would implement a living rent. And of course, part of the process is to go afterwards and call on Boris Johnson and say, no, you promised to implement a living rent. How are you going to do it? And the reply, of course, was, I never promised that. And they then showed in the film. And the other comment which I'm immensely encouraged by, I've been reading George Lecoq, and he has been doing cognitive science. And he has come to the conclusion through all many experiments and much research that we are built to cooperate. We are built to cooperate and be in community. And I was very happy to find that chimes so wonderfully well with millennia of all the major faiths saying, love your neighbour as yourself. And it's good to have science confirming some very wise words which have been just quite naturally come out of human beings and put on record for all about 11 major faiths. And I was glad on the gatekeeper of, I think, in our bill, which copies of which you have, the first item is actually a gatekeeper item. The local authority will not be able to sell land unless they're going to use it for social housing. So we're, and I don't actually, I'm not satisfied with the clause we have. And one final comment on progress, on the comments so far, is that I was asked to write a blog for the Fabian Society, and it was entitled Missing Morality, and the last sentence was, the good health and well-being of all UK citizens in or out of work must now become a national priority. So let's just turn to the slides which you've got in front of you. I'm no good at pressing buttons and the slides coming that way. First of all, I'm going to take you through a few cases. We must indeed think about how we do politics better and how we do politics compassionately. But this is a huge problem, which is here and now and must be dealt with. It's homelessness. And so let's take a few cases I've dealt with. I could do nothing for a single unemployed man evicted from a council flat because he had a spare room. The bedroom tax hit him. And there, of course, a desperate shortage of single rooms for him to move to. And the bedroom tax cut his housing benefit of £73.10. Well, he couldn't possibly pay on £73.10 a week job seekers allowance. He couldn't pay the JS. He couldn't pay the rent. And also bear in mind that it was the council tax is being imposed on benefit players in 236 out of 326 councils. So they're paying council tax. And it's not just the council tax, it's the enforcement and the call of the bailiffs as well. So paying rent and council tax out of £73.10 finished him. In Haringey, there are 2 homeless hostels, each with 50 families, and each family in 1 bedroom. Now, the council quite rightly says they've got lovely shared facilities, and indeed they have. but it's not a home. And some of them have been there for 2 years, and they have no idea where they will be placed or whether they will be able to afford the rent when they are placed. There's also a splendid self-starting church by a very enterprising Christian who is not a member of any of the established churches, and he decided he'd have his own church, and he hired a warehouse, and the ground floor of the warehouse is his church. But every night it is actually housing 50 single adults who many of whom go out to work the following morning. They are all homeless. And that's a really crucial point about this kind of homelessness. Many of them are at work. And now a case of a family of 4, and here again, the mother of the family was a teaching assistant, and they went through 10 years of being in temporary accommodation. They were first of all, and they moved time and time again. So they were first of all moved out by a landlord who defaulted on the mortgage into a flat where the upstairs toilet was leaking into their kitchen. And then they were moved into a buy-to-let who wanted this property back to sell to take the profit, so they had to be moved out of that. And one of the most, I think, humiliating experiences for any family is to be on the street with your children and your suitcases because the bailiff has changed the locks and the local authority will not help you until you are legally homeless. And they say you're not legally homeless till you're standing on the pavement. And they were moved then, after waiting 8 hours in the office of the local authority, they were moved into a into a homeless hostel, neither of the other 2 hostels I've mentioned, where there were various addicts of various addictions. So now from that they've been moved into the Love Lane estate in Harringay, which happens unfortunately to be the new Tottenham Hotspur football ground, which is magnificent. I've been to it, and it's a very football. I'm an Arsenal supporter myself, but it's between that and a brand new, magnificent, with a lift, White Hart Lane station. But in between, there's this Love Lane council estate. And the council estate needs to be knocked down in order to make a new Wembley Way from the Tube to the new magnificent stadium. That's no way to treat council stadium because it destroys the community. You were talking so rightly about building communities, but we've had enormous fights in Harringay about not only the Love Lane estate, that's an ongoing fight, but we also had the Northumberland Park estate, where we won, by the way, and we still don't know how the hovering of the multitude of international capitalists are going to affect the Northumberland Park. So we have a large-scale emergency. We have 84,740 homeless families in temporary accommodation with 126,020 children, an increase of 77% since 2010. 56,000 of those families are in London, which is 66%, and nearly 3,000 are in Harringay. And the 56,000 and the other figures, apart from the 3,000 figure, are House of Commons library figures. Shelter research has shown that 33,000 of the homeless families are employed. One or the other member of the family parents are employed. The Church Commissioners for England the Children's Commissioners for England estimated a further 92,000 children were sofa surfing with friends or relatives. The number of families with dependent children placed in B&B style accommodation increased from 630 at the end of March to 2010, at the end of March 10 to 2,190 at the end of March 2019. The real problem for us who are dealing with this hands-on is that neither the local authorities nor the national government have any viable plans as to how they're going to house these families in permanent communities, in safe communities, any time in the future. It's this dreadful mass of uncertainty that people are living in temporary accommodation or, worse still, are on the streets. So we have a vast scale of homelessness. We have the gross injustice of being evicted onto the streets and dying there. We have the scandal of people being without a permanent home in safe community for years on end. We have the power of landlords and landowners and developers who are very much in charge in Parliament, with an awful lot of members of Parliament owning property and in buy-to-let. They promised to build 1 million homes, but that must be done, but it will take many years. And it's far too long for families who've already been homeless for up to and over 10 years. And so that's why we recommend giving them priority use of the empty property. Now, we've got this bill. There's early day motion 55. Will you please make a note, early day motion 55, and all write to the same member of Parliament, if you've all got the same member of Parliament, and get him to sign it. 8 members of Parliament have signed it so far. We have asked Boris Johnson a parliamentary question. He unwisely said at PMQs, I'm proud to say that the UK is now the 3rd highest recipient of foreign investment in the world. Well, we've asked him how much that is and how much of it is being spent on property and land in the United Kingdom, and we're waiting for an answer. And we also have a petition running, which so far has got about 450 votes. We've only put up on Tuesday. The EDM was only put up on Tuesday, so we're quite happy to have 8. Just 2 final points. In Denmark, they have a civilized housing policy. If you're a foreigner, you can't buy land in Denmark unless you have been there for 5 years, and when you want to buy land, you've got to go to the Ministry of Justice. We'd have to go to the Housing Department, but they have to go to the Ministry of Justice, so it's a justice issue. And finally, long-term properties is also discouraged. If an owner moves and does not wish to sell his property, he must rent it out, or at least try to sell it. And if it's empty for more than 6 weeks, the local authority can put somebody in it and they have to take it. Now, on one final point, which is about, in our bill, we have a definition of affordable housing. And the really crucial bit about is having an adequate income. Now, affordable housing is only affordable if after rent, council tax and income tax, people can have food, fuel, clothes, transport and other necessities. So if I were going to make a contribution to the debate about basic income, I would say the basic income should be about food, clothes, fuel, transport and other necessities, which can never, never, never be used to pay rent. So the rent, and therefore you have to solve the housing problem in order to have a basic income which is truly effective. Thank you. Sorry for taking too long.